Hello everyone. In this video, I will share about learning in English about factivity, implication, and modality. So for the first, let's discuss about factivity. A factive predicate has a predication as one of its arguments or a full clause, ground clause, or an abstract noun phrase. And whether affirmative or negative, it presupposes the truth of that predication. For example, we forgot that the meeting was cancelled, and we didn't forget that the meeting was cancelled. So combining the example 1a and 1b, this can be stated in formula in which stand for presupposes. So it will be we forget or didn't forget that the meeting was cancelled, and the factivity is the meeting was cancelled. Note that factive is not the same as factual. Whether the predication is true or not can only be determined by investigating events and situations outside language. Factive means that the predication is presented linguistically as being true. The second is implication. Some predicates do not presuppose the truth of proposition that occurs as one of their arguments but carry some implication about the truth or non-truth of the proposition. We find an interesting variety of implication and can recognize different kinds of implicative predicates first sketched by Cartoonen 1971 and sometimes called conditional factives. So for example, different predicates have different implicative values, and we recognize the groups of predicates according to what they imply about the truth value of the included clause. If the predicate is affirmative, it implies that the following proposition is true, and if the predicate is negative, there is an implication that the following proposition is false, or the symbol of implication is like you can see in the slide. And for the example is 12a, I managed to catch my bus and I caught it. And 12b, I managed to catch my bus but I didn't catch it. So sentence 12a and sentence 12b is if you hear someone say I managed to catch my bus, but you will no doubt infer that the speaker did catch the bus in question. Hearing the negative equivalent, I didn't manage to catch my bus, you infer that the speaker did not catch the bus. The verb manage, like some other verbs followed by a reduced clause, has a certain implicative value. Different predicates have different implicative values, and we recognize 6 groups of predicates according to what they imply about the truth or value of the included clause. So I managed to catch my bus will be I caught my bus, but I didn't manage to catch my bus will be I didn't catch my bus is the implication. Affirmative implies affirmative and negative implies negative. For the example, we happened or changed to see your brother. The implicative of affirmative implies or affirmative and negative implies negative is we saw your brother and he chose condescended to wait for us. The implicative of affirmative implies is he waited for us. Affirmative implies negative or that the embedded proposition is not true, and negative has an affirmative implication that the embedded proposition is true. For the example, I avoided or missed or escaped attending the party. The implication is I didn't attend the party. I didn't avoid or miss or escape attending the party. The implication is I attended the party. When an embedded proposition is expressed as a full clause, implication is less easy to state because the truth value of the clause or its proposition depends on a number of factors, whether the subject of the clause is the same as the subject of the main verb, and whether the embedded clause has definite or indefinite noun phrase. Modality. People talk about factual matters, what is true and what is not true, what was happened and what has not happened. But we also talk about what may be true or not, what ought to be and what ought not to be, what certain individuals are capable of and what is impossible for them, what obligation we have to do or to refrain from doing. All these notions together constitute modality. Let's look at example 28a. It's your duty to visit your ailing parents. 28b. You ought to visit your ailing parents. And for example 29a. Jessica is possibly at home now, and 29b. Jessica may be at home now. Here too there are nearly synonymous sentences containing the same proposition and making equivalent statement about the proposition. So your duty, it can be what you ought to, what you ought to do, and for possibly, it the synonymous is a possibility is what may be. Sentence 28 and B are about obligation. Sentence 29a and B are about possibility. All modality involves obligation or possibility of one sort or another. In 28 and B, the obligation is centered on the subject, you. The sentence tells what is necessary for you to do. But in 28a and b, the possibility is not centered on the subject. Jessica, it applies to the whole proposition, Jessica's being at home now. So we recognize another distinction in modality. It may be concentrated, and some entity or entities typically denoted by the subject of the sentence or centered on a preposition contained in the sentence. Modality can be expressed in nouns like duty, obligation, probability, likelihood, in adjectives like necessary, possibly, likely, in adverbs such as obviously, probably, perhaps. But for description on how modality is expressed in English, we need to concentrate on modal verbs. So the modal verbs like ought and may. There is modal verbs there is several modal verbs, for example, can, could, may, might, will, would, must, should, ought, need, have to, have got to. As Joe's 1964 147 points out, a child of 4 may ask the meaning of duty but is not likely to ask but the meaning of must. The child knows what must means, but neither a child nor an adult is capable of explaining the meaning. So the obligation for in a modality there were two. For the first is deonetic modality. It's the necessity of an individual to act or not act in a particular way. The second is epistemic modality, the possibility, probability, or impossibility of a particular proposition. So, obligation is expressed in several English modal verbs. Examples: we must leave immediately, we have to leave immediately, or we have to get leave immediately. We need to leave immediately, and we ought to leave immediately. We should leave immediately. These verbs express different degrees of obligation, but probably different speakers of English do not agree on their relative rank. For this author, must is, as in 30a, is the most forceful statement of obligation and is somewhat formal. Have and have got are more colloquial and not as strong as must. The others follow in order. Need is nearly as strong as have. Ought expresses a weaker obligation but is still stronger than should. Other speakers of English may well have different ranking. So in negative obligation are illustrate next. We mustn't stay here. We didn't have to stay here. We needn't stay here. We don't need to stay here. We oughtn't to stay here, we shouldn't to stay here. There is a great difference between 21, 31a and the rest of this. The first says that we are obligated not to stay. Negativity is attached to the embedded proposition that staying is our obligation. The others say that we are not obligated to stay. Negativity applies to the modal verb staying is not an obligation. Schematically, the difference can be represent like must but not to stay here, not have or need, doubt or ought or should stay here. So the conclusion is affective predicate, whether affirmative or negative, present the embed proposition or establish truth. An affective predicate gives no indication whether the proposition is true or not. For the implicative predicates are recognized differing from one another in what can be inferred about the content to the embedded sentence from affirmative and negative values of the main predicate. Modality has to do with two kinds of necessity, obligation, or possibility or probability. Modality may be expressed in various ways, but our presentation has concentrated on the modal verbs of English. Theonetic modality has to do with obligation, the necessity of action or non-action. Epistemic modality is concerned with possibility or the necessity of existence or non-existence. That's all. Hopefully you can understand what I share in this video. Thank you.